Hey everyone, Starving Artist here. So here's the thing, I read a lot, and that isn't to say that I read a lot of hardcover non-fiction books. No. I read a lot of manga, webtoons, manhwa, basically I read a bunch of comics. Not to say that I don't read full-on books either, I just don't read them as often. So I think it's fair to say that I've come across a lot of comics that no one has ever heard about. So I'm making a little series where I discuss these manga and webtoons, because they simply don't get the attention they deserve. I also am making this series because I want to talk about these comics, and this is my way of doing that. So today we're going to talk about something I just finished binge reading because I couldn't put it down. A little webtoon called Unhinged, written by KimBiva. Now, Unhinged follows our main protag, Erica. When we first start the story, she's a small child and she lives with her mother. Her mother is sick, and she talks about how all her neighbors are saying she's gonna die soon. And she says to her mother, "Hey, you're gonna live longer than me, right?" And her mom's like, "Of course, dear, I'm gonna live longer than you." Then you scroll to the next panel, and Mother Dearest is dead. And there are a ton of flies around her body, implying that she has been dead for longer than we might have thought. And our little Erica over here might not be the most sound of mind. At least those were my first impressions. And soon after this, we jump cut about 15 years. Erica is an adult in a loving relationship with her husband. She leaves her house for a bit, and when she returns, she stumbles upon a corpse. Her husband's corpse. Her husband's decapitated corpse that is missing his hands. She gets blamed for his murder and gets put in jail. We don't follow her in prison for too long, but we do see her getting abused by the other inmates, and it leaves her with a bunch of physical scars, notably the one over her right eye. We cut to 7 years later to her out of prison, and she is determined to find her husband's killer. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a revenge plot and a psychological horror. My favorite kind of stories rolled into one. So we follow Erica as she goes around trying to figure out what happened. I also feel I should mention that the thing that first got me interested in this webtoon was its art. Seriously, look at this art! It is absolutely breathtaking. I saw the cover art and I was like, this! I'm putting everything else down to read this. Jinmen? Spy X Family? Nah. I'm reading Unhinged now. Am I finally gonna read Chainsaw Man because I promised a friend that I'd read it? Nope, no. That's moving down the list. It's time for Unhinged. Anyway. She finds a lead in the police station, she follows it and gets led to a loan shark. She visits him and he basically evades every one of her questions, then shoots a question of his own. "Do you think I killed him? Is that why you have a knife in your bag?" And then she attacks him, like a girl boss. Sadly, she gets beaten and threatened by the guy, who says, "If you keep this up, you might be the one to get hurt." Erica doesn't listen to him because, as I said before, she's a girl boss. She does what she wants. We cut to her visiting someone else's house. She rings the doorbell and this man opens the door. This blonde dude in glasses. Normal, right? Until you look in the background and see a black-haired boy covered in blood dragging a body. The man at the door grabs her, drags her inside, and ties her up. And here are my two favorite characters. We got Best Boy Paul. He's just a little lad. A little unhinged, one might say, but he's best boy. I mean, look at this little guy. He can do no wrong. Ignore that picture. He can do no wrong. Other than Paul, we got Boom. This blonde glasses dude? Yeah, he's Boom. I'm drawing him in the Speedpaint right now. He's very pretty under his glasses. Don't look at that picture. He's pretty, I swear. We got Boom and Paul, and they are essentially contract killers, and Erica here just walked in on them in the middle of a job. Now, Boom and Paul are trying to decide what to do with her. Paul wants to kill her, and Boom protests, saying they only needed to kill the one guy. Then Erica attacks Boom with a knife, and Boom goes, "Fuck it! You're a dead girl now!" But before Boom can kill her, Paul gets a phone call from their boss, whose name is, get ready for this one, Box. Her name is Box. 'Cause she wears a box on her head. Anyway, Paul gets a phone call from Box. He explains the situation to her and she says, "Bring her in! Bring in Erica! She seems chill." So they do, and Box goes, "Hey, work for us. I'll find info on your husband's killer for you to, help, or whatever." And Erica's like, "Shit. Guess I gotta work for you guys now." And based on that, you'd think that Erica just goes along with everything. But she doesn't. Surprisingly enough, this is something I enjoy very much. It's that she doesn't just go along with whatever everyone says. She constantly questions everything, fights back on everything, she tries to figure out everything, and she pries into everyone's personal lives. That last one isn't as honorable. She's not accepting of her situation at all, and she spends the first half of the manhwa refusing to even humor the idea of complying. That is until she has a falling out with Boom. Erica's relationship with Boom is shaky to say the least. They constantly fight and try to kill each other, and even when everything's fine, something happens and their relationship crumbles once again. To be honest, one of the things that hurt the most while reading this manhwa is seeing the relationships between Boom, Paul, and Erica crumble. Their dynamic is so cool to me, and when they aren't together, I'm just sad. So, the event that forces Erica to decide whether she'll fully commit to this little assassin guild or not. She goes into a basement. Now that may sound dumb, until you consider the fact that Paul warned her not to go into this basement. He specifically said that it had Boom's stuff, and he would kill anyone if they entered. But curiosity got the better of Erica, and she goes into the basement. I won't say what she sees in there, go read the manga to find out, but Boom catches her in the act, and once again tries to kill her. She does get away though, a running theme in this manhwa. Erica getting away from people who are trying to kill her. And she runs home and cowers, wrapped in a blanket. She is terrified to say the least, and Boom knows where she lives, and she knows that Boom will come to her house to finish the job. And eventually, he does come over, and gives Erica a choice. He gives her a knife and says, "Stab the table if you're with us, stab my hand if you're not. But if you stab my hand, I will hunt you down and kill you." Erica says, "Well, shit," and joins them, for real this time. And that's about the first half of the story. I would talk about the rest, but this is getting pretty long, so I'm going to cut the story here and start getting into my analysis. The story is, by all means, not a masterpiece, nor does it pretend to be. But it's a very entertaining ride. I'm used to these types of stories having gratuitous violence and brutal death scenes, though this manhwa does not have too much of that, which I appreciate. There are scenes where characters are covered in blood, but it's not excessive. Out of all of the characters, I have to say I was the least attached to Erica. Not to say she wasn't great, I was just more invested in the other characters such as Boom and Paul. Throughout Season 1, we get a deep dive into their backstories and get a full understanding of their personalities. While we also get that for Erica, it just didn't hit as hard as Boom or Paul's did. What this manhwa lacks with an original story, it makes up for with interesting characters. I'm pretty sure we've all seen the trope of someone on a revenge binge and resorting to murder before. I don't want to do too deep of a character analysis, because if I do that, it'll ruin the fun of reading the story and figuring out things for yourself, but the very basics of the characters. Paul is a very timid man who assumes everyone's out to kill him. He's in his early 20s but doesn't know his exact age, being that he never celebrated his birthday as a kid. He's on some sort of medication, which is said to keep him grounded, but it's never expanded on what that medication is, and if it actually helps him, or if it's doing something else. But there are multiple occasions where Box has gotten mad that Paul did not take his meds. Expanding on the point where he believes everyone is out to kill him, this isn't an exaggeration. To give a glimpse into Paul's character, he's driving a car with Boom and Erica inside. Some guy curses Paul out, saying that he'd rip his eyes out. Paul tails this guy for half an hour until he pulls over and just murders him on the side of the road. But, as if that was enough, the guy who he killed had someone else in the car. The other person comes out of the car and stabs Paul, and Paul just looks down with a half-pitying, half-terrified expression, and says something along the lines of, "Why did you do that?" And he proceeds to kill him as well. Paul just killed 2 random strangers on the road because they threatened him because of road rage. So I think it's safe to say that Paul checks the Unhinged box on our checklist here. Boom is very dry about most things. He's in his mid to late 20s, and he is very much a man who respects his personal boundaries. But once he sets his mind to something, he doesn't give it up. He holds grudges, and after catching up and finishing Season 1, Boom seems to be a foil for Erica, because while Erica holds grudges, she is not nearly as cutthroat as Boom. She puts her personal beliefs before her job, and this is something that Boom hates about her. Boom is less of an open book. He values privacy, and he doesn't let anything go. So I don't really know what else to write about him that doesn't spoil his character. There are also some other minor characters like Box and Derek. We get glimpses into their characters, but not enough to do a whole analysis on them, but short ones. box is very secretive, she doesn't let anything go, and even by the season finale, you can't really get a read on her motives. She says that she wants to rid the world of evil, but during the season finale, we don't know how true that statement is. Derek, on the other hand, is the weapons provider for the guild, and he seems to have some sort of relationship with Paul that I won't get into because of spoilers. His motives are also shoddy at best, but he looks cool, so we can ignore that for a hot sec. Throughout the story, despite its dark undertones, there's surprisingly a lot of humor within it, especially with timing. It's that sort of dry visual humor that I adore. I mean, look at this. The silent lifting of their guns to kill this one girl. I would be lying to say if I didn't cackle the first time I read that. So, the main points. The characters are interesting, the art is breathtaking, and Paul is just a little lad. And if that isn't reason enough to read Unhinged, then it's kinda sad. I've never really done any of this summary, analytical type things before, so please let me know what you think. If you want me to read any particular manga or manhwa, let me know in the comments section, and if I'm into it, I'll make a video on it. So, sorry for rambling for so long. I'm gonna go now. Bye, lads!